Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark, one of the most infamous plays in Broadway history. Where do we even start here? If you don't already know, Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark was a Broadway interpretation of the 2002 Spider-Man movie. Although from the horrors you shall soon witness, you'll be able to tell they took a lot of liberties with it. Although the play itself is about a tale of heroes and villains, the creation of the play is about spending $72 million during the 2008 recession from getting too ambitious. How could they go so wrong with the Shakespeare of comic books, you may ask? Well, let me give you an answer with the sad tale of Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark's production and the economic crater it left in its wake. The concept of a Spider-Man play wasn't even that bad of an idea. A musical was a bit dodgy, but it's Spider-Man. There were 3 blockbusters from that guy not too long before this. How could you go wrong? Julie Taymor was writing it, for Pete's sake. She did the Lion King play. This has to be a record-breaking performance. The script writing did get a bit complicated because the playwright really wanted to include the backstory of Arachne from Greek mythology because she quote-unquote felt like there was something mythical at the center of it. And after a lot of back and forth about it, Arachne got in, to disastrous effects later on. Also, Imagine Dragons of all people were also going to make their start in this play, but they got scrapped and replaced by Bono and the Age. Radioactive was originally going to be about the radioactive spider that bit Spider-Man. Look it up, it's true. But even if we ignore all that, this show had one fatal flaw. It relied on complicated wire technology for the 27 mid-air action sequences. Its main selling point was that it would be the most technologically advanced Broadway play ever, and it caused these stunts to be so complicated, so advanced, they had to get computers to route this stuff out, and they were just as dangerous as it sounds. During the rehearsals, stunt performer Brandon Rubendahl landed on a ramp that was a couple of degrees out and ended up in crutches. Kevin Aubin tried the exact same stunt a month later and broke his wrists. It got so bad that the New York Department of Labor started inspecting it, and all hope they had a surefire hit died the day the previews began. The play had to be stopped over and over again because the technical errors were that bad, with the worst part being when Spider-Man was supposed to fly through the audience and land on the balcony, but he just stopped 7 feet above the first few rows. This was the worst possible situation too. No one could reach him, and one of the crew members poked him with a stick like he was a dead corpse. And I quote from Glenn Berger, "It was like a live Spider-Man pinata." This wasn't as worse as it gets either. They had 182 previews after this too. That was the most a play has ever had in all of recorded history, and a whole can of worms opened up with it too. One of the worst things to ever happen during production happened during one of these many previews. Close your eyes and imagine you're in the theater for this play. You heard rumors that it had a very troubled production from a news site, and you decided to go see it with your own eyes. You watch in awe as Spider-Man jumps from a 30-foot high ledge, until you realize something. There was nothing holding him up. You see him fall into the dark abyss as you hear a slapping sound and a pre-recorded scream come from the speakers, leaving you sitting there to wallow in your own gruesome thoughts until you see people running on stage to come help him, proving your worst fears right. Now open your eyes, cause all of that happened in front of a live audience. Chris Tierney was the one who fell as a stunt double, and he broke both his spine and ribs during the collision on December 20th, 2010. He had to go through constant rehabilitation over 4 months to recover. The last 2 injuries happened afterwards. Natalie Mendoza got concussed from getting hit in the head with equipment, and a stunt performer got his ankle stuck in the hydraulic stage lift. Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark was so infamous for injuries that the actors thought the play was cursed. The lawsuits from these incidents, bad press, constant delays, the budget being bumped up to $75 million, cementing its presence as a monetary black hole for investors, and the Great Recession itself made its very name synonymous with theatrical failure. And the story they had was a fever dream, man! The Green Goblin just dies halfway, and the Arachne shows up, falls in love with Spider-Man, and uses dreams to lure him away from MJ, and giant spiders show up and start singing about shoes? I'm just as confused as you are, and so were the people working on the play. They tried to get Julie to cut the Arachne garbage and expand the first half to be the rest of the show, but Julie Taylor refused because if she did, it would just be a standard superhero romp without the mythology stuff. Because of this, she got straight up mutinied and replaced by the creative consultant Philip William McKinley. The show opened without her on June 14th, 2011. So let's see what impact crater this show left on the economy, shall we? At this point, everybody knew this play was doomed. There was no realistic scenario where this would make enough money to break even with the $75 million they spent on it. They even broke the record for the amount of tickets sold that year until they were beaten by Wicked, and even that couldn't save them. The play sucked too, with the awful music, throwing in a dance number every chance they could and ruining the whole thing, the Green Goblin spanking himself, and a whole slew of other garbage that I will now put in a montage. But that's not what matters here, next to the monetary mushroom cloud I'd left behind. And with $72 million lost, Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark was a record-breaking performance, after all. Not for great story, or acting, or technological prowess as it promised, but for being the most expensive Broadway play in theater history. Well, employees, that was the worst thing I've ever seen. We are $72 million in debt, my wife left me, and I'm firing all of you. What the fuck? 3 months after the one and only showing of Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark, Julie Taymor, the original writer and apparent final boss of the story, filed a lawsuit against the producers for using her work on the book and the play without compensating her. This could bump up the costs from $75 million to billions of dollars. And in order to keep her back, they struck her with a counter-lawsuit for, get this, refusing to develop a musical that followed the family-friendly story of Spider-Man, and instead made a psychedelic freak show about suicide, death, and sex! Dear God, Taymor, what is your deal? It's Spider-Man! Of course children are gonna be seeing this fricked up stuff! Good thing we didn't bring the kids. Jared! Apparently, Arachne was also a self-insert, so she cast Spider-Man, the main character, aside so she could take the spotlight. And in reaction to these concerns and critiques, she said, and I am not making this up, I don't give a about audience reaction. The only reason they even got out of the lawsuit was because she screwed up the copyrights and they didn't count in court. And with that, the exiled scriptwriter and her court case were cast into the abyss, with their vile creation living on in infamy in Broadway history forever.